this is Peter. Today I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and what we're talking about today is lenses and the type of lenses that you choose for your shoot, the type of lenses which make sense for your film. So it's going to be a little bit more technical than my other videos, because we're going to delve into each different lens, you know, the standard kinds and what they can achieve for you and your production. There are so many videos online which can go into a lot more depth about types of, you know, what a 24 will do, what a 35 will do, what a 50mm will do. And of course you're talking about different sensors, whether it's like a full frame or, you know, a cropped sensor. And, you know, even though I care quite a lot about camera work and about choosing the right camera and the right lens for my production, I'm not that kind of up to speed on some of the more finer details of it, you know, that can be found in other videos online. So, you know, and that's okay as well, because you don't have to be a director and know the full range of, you know, technical camera work settings, or, you know, understand if you're going into becoming, you know, lighting your own projects, you don't have to understand everything about lighting in order to get a good shot out of it, in order to get what you want from your production. It helps to work with people who are, but you need to, and I do suggest that you have a full range of every kind of skill that goes into production. So you dabble with a little bit of acting in front of the camera yourself. This is me kind of doing that. I have actually acted in some of my own productions, but you don't have to understand all of Stanislavski to understand a little bit about the pressure that it takes to act in front of the camera, and the kind of how it is one of the hardest roles to, you know, become congruent with your environment and kind of relax into it. You can see different masterclasses on this. You can see Dustin Hoffman's masterclass. You can look at you can read Stanislavski's An Actor Prepares. You can you can start doing this, but instead of going down that route, let's go down the route I was going on, which is camera work. So you don't have to be a professional photographer like Annie Leibovitz to understand the fundamentals of photography. You can learn that in the first 15 minutes. You will be learning cinematic language for the rest of your life. A great way to learn is to watch a bunch of films. If you watch 3 films a day for 2 years, chances are you're going to get a lot of cinematic language, you know, in your head. It isn't everything. It's not like you do all that and then suddenly you're an expert. For me, it has always come down to just placing the camera where I feel is best for the story, for the emotion, and for the character. And you only get better through practice, not theory, on that regard. So the theory is kind of like watching films, and the practice is then going out and shooting with a camera yourself. And even just for things which aren't your production, if you do this for location recce's or during rehearsals, is a great chance to put your camera in the right place that you feel like whilst you're watching the rehearsals. I see quite a lot of directors look at the monitor instead of through the viewfinder when they do their shoots, and this is kind of a mistake as far as I'm concerned, because I know there are different ways of doing things, and, you know, maybe you should be looking at your performance. We will see. There are different styles, I think, but I feel like with me, you know, the product is going to end up on the camera, so, you know, that's the lens with which you view the film. You shouldn't be kind of creating your own lens by standing next to the camera and watching the performance. This isn't theatre, this is film. So, you know, maybe in rehearsal you can stand, you know, in kind of the area, but I think you have to have an eye for this, because ultimately the eye is going to be the camera at the end of the day. It's not going to be you standing off to the side, and your audience isn't going to see things from a certain angle. And I'm mostly talking about when you're on set recording. Just look through the viewfinder, see it that way. See it the way it's intended to be shown, or ultimately the restrictions of how you're going to see it, because the only thing that matters is what's in the frame and what's out of it, in the words of Martin Scorsese. So you got to see what that frame is. Now, as regards what's in the frame and what's out of it, if you use a wider angle lens, you're going to get more information, you're going to get more textures on the screen at once, and you're going to get a lot to look at, but you're going to get that distortion from having a wide lens. You're going to get I've just noticed it started snowing. You're going to get that wider lens, so it's harder to kind of focus on one particular thing at a time. It does give the audience, and they're not stupid, so it's good to give them so much choice like this, but your audience isn't stupid, so don't kind of play dumb to them by getting them to see a certain thing in a shot unless it is so rich in content that it actually says something, says a million different things. Your idea, I think, for every shot should be to show a million different things. Maybe in a wider shot, they have a million different things to see. Maybe in a tighter shot, say like a 50mm or an 85mm shot, you're showing a particular thing which you're focusing on, and maybe the fact that you're showing it is richer in content. It's all about the intention and how rich that intention is. If you're showing an object focus of, say, like a glove, for example, and, say like we pan down and see that I'm wearing a glove, well, you've shown that for a particular reason. There's intention behind that move, behind that shot if you just cut to it. Whereas if you see that I'm wearing a glove in a wider shot whilst I'm moving my hands, and that's just something that you pick up on, you're not stupid. You're going to understand that you're seeing, it's going to register in your subconscious. And one of the best ways to attack people is through their subconscious. So when you're watching a film like The Shining or Eyes Wide Shut, you have so many little details that are going on in the frame, in the corner of the frame, off to the side like that guy, and you pick up on these things subconsciously. And so that's kind of why I like to stay wide a lot of the time. If you're travelling through Chungking Mansions in Chungking Express, Wong Kar Wai, you're getting to see loads of different things, but you're seeing them at an altered kind of view because they're there, but you can't pick up on them. They're not sharp. They're kind of brushing past like a brushstroke, like an impressionist painting. So that's his style there. But if you have a wider shot on an actor, like say a Terry Gilliam kind of shot or a Terrence Malick shot, you've got that the details in the background there. I like to do those because, quite frankly, like if I'm seeing an actor on screen, the first time I watch the film, I'm going to pay attention to the performance. The second time I watch the film, I don't just want to be paying attention to that performance if I've seen it. Yeah, and a scene can always be watched again because of their performance. You can watch it a million times and see, the nuances in the actor's performance. That's great, but you're not always in the mood for acting. Sometimes you're in the mood for texture. Sometimes you're in the mood for seeing a painting. So the more content you have by having that wider shot, you're still going to get my performance. You're still going to get the nuances of being able to see the expression on my face. How wide can you go and how far back can your subject be before it becomes lost that the nuances are there? So in the words of De Niro, you don't have to do anything as an actor. You just have to kind of, just show up and be there and be in character. And the audience will get it. You don't have to raise your eyebrows or do some weird shit, extra shit. Your feelings are there and the truth is so easy to see. If if someone was to walk by me right now and look at the camera, you could tell straight away maybe what they were thinking. You don't have to have a close-up of the guy. And so really, we're starting to figure out that it's all about information release and how much information release you realistically get across in those shots. How much new information release is discovered throughout the process of storyboarding, throughout the process of script writing. And you've probably got to plan this from the very beginning. Again, practice is the best way to get great at this, not actual just theory, but figuring out through editing, through learning editing as well, how quickly you can tell the story and how much information just becomes available by shooting a lot wider sometimes and having a bunch of wider shots together. You can get an awful lot information and atmosphere across just in 20 seconds of shot. If you to go tight on an actor's face, it says something. I usually think that you're kind of wasting a lot of the time. A lot of the time, it's a difficult one because obviously a close-up is great. If you've got it framed on a close-up and you can see the actor's skin really clearly, you can see the kind of like freckles and see the kind of painting and the textures within their face. That's great as well if you're able to do that. Sometimes you can't see textures wide, you have to zoom in. And if I'm traveling around holding a camera and running and gun shooting, I would probably want a lens which can actually go a bit tighter and focus on some of the more smaller details that you can't get from a wide angle lens. Most of the time, an 11-16 that I usually use, that I use on every single one of these videos, is able to get the textures pretty adequately the closer you go to the ground. So that's why I use that for my textures. It's great for getting as many textures as possible and also relaying the geography of a location so that, textures get boring after a few minutes of looking at them. So sometimes you want to be able to see where you are in the world to get the geography across in a way which is something which the audience can focus on, because then you're saying something with the geography as well as just textures. The same applies to actors' performances, the same applies to an object focus sometimes. So if you're trying to utilize cinematic language such as using an object focus, this is one of the most basic words in cinematic language. What exactly are you going to do? Are you going to have a straight close-up object focus like everyone else has? Probably, because it might be more interesting to go wider and have it, off to the side so that the object is like here, and therefore that's different, but I've just thought of that as something which is different for the sake of being different, which probably means it's a bad shot. So you would think that it should be kind of dead center in front of the frame so that it shows some kind of importance to it. To have it off to the side is a little bit extravagant, a little bit needless, because what's the point in getting the shot if you're just going to do something artsy-fartsy with it? There has to be a reason why you're doing it. Like, say, if a puddle is dripping, is slowly kind of flowing into a piece of rubbish, for example, then the rubbish could be on that side of the frame and the puddle could kind of drift in to that. And there you've got maybe a story in one shot. You've got some kind of, a reason for that to happen, for it to be on that side. So you're getting an information release, and the information is focused on that very point, but here we're saying a story. So motion is a great way to start cinematic language effectively. It is one of the kind of four, cuts, tracks, calm, and shapes, which I mentioned, which is basically if a shape enters the scene, it could be a human being, it could be a bus moving into the frame. If something enters the scene, like that car that just went by, or the bus there, that is motion and shapes which have changed the look of the frame. And when you think of things this kind of logistically and this kind logically, if you think of things this kind of what's in the frame or what's out of it, everything becomes just light and just shapes, and so then it only matters what kind of lens you're using to capture that light and shape and texture. So it stands to reason that having a wider lens means you get to capture more motion that you didn't have planned. By going tighter, you're going to get a lot of motion, but imagine a film which you use an 85mm lens, look up how tight that is, just quickly now, and then see that, a lot of films could be shot like this. In fact, a lot of Hollywood films are their standard is 35mm lenses. I don't really go above 24. The makers of the film Fargo, the Coen brothers, don't go above 24 pretty much for that entire film. So how are you able to make a film without going as tight as some of the more standard Hollywood films? And it's not to say that 35 is a boring lens which only Hollywood uses, but it has become a standard for a reason. So the tighter you go, the more kind of motion that you have at, say, like an 85 millimeter lens means that basically all of this is going super fast, and of course, you see motion a lot clearer. So you gotta know the speeds of motion depending on the angle of the camera. There's a lot to take in, which is why you can't think of everything a lot of the time. You're gonna have to do years of study in order to get used to this and go out and practice this all the time. And as a director, we want to be studying acting as well as sound. We want to be studying score composition. We want to be studying editing. We want to, be a jack of all trades in a way. So we don't have 20 years to delve into exactly what lens causes exactly what effect. But we hope that we can hire someone or work with someone who does know that a lot of the time, and also kind of has a little bit of the other roles built into them as well. Because it is worthwhile to work with people who understand every single role, so that you know the difficulties and how to work with them, rather than just doing your own job and expecting everyone else to do just their job and not actually helping each other. Both of those things are important. Doing your own job to the best of your ability and helping other people as well. If you're a DOP and you don't help the sound guy, and you're a sound guy, you don't help the DOP get position where they want to be, you're going to cause an argument very quickly, and you're not going to be that kind of team player that is working for the benefit of the film. You're working for the benefit of your own show reel is what you're probably doing. So, and it doesn't mean compromising. It is. I don't see it that you have to compromise as a DOP or as a sound guy, because they say that you would have to. And if I think of a film set right now, the first question is when the sound guy goes, "Is the boom in shot key?" And they should never really be asking, "Well, can you move the camera back?" That's like, well, can you do a shit job so that I can do a good job? And it's not personal, it's just that they want to do their best job. And if everyone's just working out for themselves, then no one's going to do a good job. There's always going to be a shot which is ruined. So you got to work with the director, the DOP, the sound guy, and figure out what is the most important thing that we're trying to get out of this shot, and what is the kind of thing. And to me, because I believe that a visual medium means that the visuals are harder to get right than the sound of which most of the background sound you can get after the shoot as something, that you can go out on your own spare time and get it, and then add it in. It's not always the case, but I think that it's harder to fake. It's interesting because it's harder to fake good sound, i.e. if you get bad dialogue, it's always going to be shit, and it's harder to convince the audience that this is a quality film that they're watching. But at the same time, if something walks in the background of the shot, what are you going to do? Like CGI it out at our budget? You shouldn't be doing that anyway, I think. So that take is ruined as far as I'm concerned. So it is a visual medium, and getting the visuals right is one of the most fundamental things that you have to do, because I'm out here in the cold with a tripod camera, and if the lighting's, you've got so many roles going into making the shot look fantastic and making it look true to the character and getting something artistic from it, like a painting. Sound, it doesn't matter. No, it does. But basically, getting good sound is something which is done as a kind of secret agent, like a NSA operative, or super spy just coming in from the bottom, just making sure they kind of get the best sound possible within the confines of what the frame dictates. So that's always the case, that the frame dictates the shot, not the sound guy. But then again, we're ignoring the sound guy there, aren't we? So really, it has to come down to, unless you want to play that catch-22 game, it has to come down to what is most important in this shot. Is it important to stay wide or tight sometimes? Is it important to get the dialogue? Is it important that the dialogue is even there at all for this shot? If we can't do it and the shot seems more important than the dialogue, every case has to be dissected for, and judged on its own merit of what's the most important thing. And you kind of should know this going in. Maybe you don't write all this down, but you should know it intuitively, I think, through researching what shots you're going to be doing. Can't always do that if you're running and gunning, if you're going about that style of improvise, but if you're improvise, you've got to understand why the French New Wave existed the way that it did. That how you can't be too picky sometimes about or sometimes it's okay if the boom just ends up in shot at the end, because, for example, because the nature of running and gunning, you can't just be that strict on yourself. You have to do things that way for that style at that time. Later on, static tripod shot, maybe you can afford to move the camera a little bit so that you get a slightly different shape sometimes, slightly different frame. For example, that's not a terrible shot, neither is that. They both say something, and you maybe have to reposition the actor, but there are a million different good shots that you can get. That if the location is atmospheric enough, if it's important enough, you can change it. You don't have to spend all day, because let's face it, the shot that you've set up on the tripod with the camera wasn't like the storyboard. The storyboard's so sacred and fantastic that you've taken a photo of. What the fuck? Just set up the camera, see if the shot's amazing. If it's not amazing, put it somewhere where it is amazing. If the sound is so shit that you can't hear it, move the fucking shot. Unless it is so incredibly atmospheric that you want to get one take of this. Maybe then the dialogue isn't that important. Maybe then the actors have to move somewhere and the blocking has to change. You have to cheat for the camera a lot of the time. Everyone has to be working together to do this. So the thing about lenses is, if you're choosing to shoot wider, you've got to bear all this in mind. If you're choosing to shoot tighter, it's a little bit easier to get the sound guy in to get everything working to your advantage there, and the actors are the ones who have to cheat to stay in the frame, to stay still in the frame, because let's say if I go tighter on this, the actors then don't have a lot of room to move, do they? So compared to that, where they can basically go off and do whatever the fuck they like. But so you find that you constantly all have to work with each other. One of the things I hate doing is altering maybe the angle of a shot, the kind of zoom, let's say, of a shot, changing it, say, on this lens from an 11 to a 16, just because you're trying to frame something out. It's not really that atmospheric, and you're kind of prioritizing continuity and a compromise for, instead of prioritizing atmosphere and character and your choice as an artist behind the lens. It seems obvious that you shouldn't be kind of ruining your shot for something maybe in the background. And a lot of people worry about we want to frame out that construction, the scaffolding, or we want to frame out maybe the people in the background, or we want to frame out a certain brand sometimes. And it's like, if that brand's so far in the background, it doesn't matter that much. I think if the license plate's in the background, it doesn't matter that much. You're going to find out one way or another whether it was that important a lot of the time. I wouldn't go about, trying to get the rights to a soundtrack that you've had planned from the very beginning and then kind of using that in your film, because that kind of thing will come back for a copyright claim a lot of the time, and it's just not worth planning your entire film based on one soundtrack and then finding out you're ruined by the end. So I'm not really someone who comes up with shots based on, or at least not anymore, I don't come up with shots based on cinematic language particularly that I've already seen. So for example, I'm not like Scorsese in the way that he will come up with a shot that is from a film which he once saw. I'm more of a Tarkovsky in that you come up with an original shot and you learn the language. You kind of go outwards instead of cultivating what you have and being conservative with the shots that already exist in the dictionary of cinematic language. So you won't catch a shot reverse shot, a standard shot reverse shot a lot of the time, although a lot of dialogue scenes force you to do that shot reverse shot, and that's okay as well. You don't have to be forced to do a type of let's say a shot reverse shot. You don't have to be forced to do something original for the sake of being original. You can use a different angle lens a lot of the time. I like to go tight. I like to go tight on to kind of that kind of view in the kind of Sergio Leone Western. So I do kind of borrow from films in a way, but it depends when and for what reason, and usually there's some kind of other element which makes it a little bit original, which makes it something interesting to me. Why is that shot interesting to me? Or I will go close and wide to a subject like I am right now, really, just to kind of, and the actors don't like it when you get this close to them with the camera, because I'm about a centimetre away from the lens right now, and they think, what the hell is that shot? Or a shot of my eye? No, it's a shot of your whole face, your fucking torso still in shot, because actors won't understand lens angles, so they've kind of you've got to show them the frame a lot of the time, because it's important for the actors to see the frame. It's important for them to know how much room they have in the shot. Even if they don't ask, sometimes you want to show them quickly and then never show them again, because they'll be looking at their performance. So what usually works is if you take the story of a location, maybe like location geography, and then, for example, in the latest season 5 of Better Call Saul, there's an episode where Nacho jumps from one building to another, and Lalo Salamanca's in the car, and you see the geography of the location there, and the shots that are chosen for those scenes are very kind of from the point of view of one person or the other. And basically it kind of switches who we're following at that time, and that's important. That's kind of cross-cutting at its best, because you're using the geography of the location, you're using cinematic language, which is pretty obvious that they would do that. I mean, cross-cutting is one of the more obvious, fundamental, subconscious cinematic language which people put in without realizing, and that's not a problem. But sometimes the type of shot that you use then becomes maybe unoriginal. It can, at least. I mean, there are so many boring ways you could have done a scene like that, which is such filled with such tension that you just zap it of all that suspense and tension. A great way to do this would be to follow the Hitchcock idea of this, because the master of suspense knows how to do that kind of scene effectively. Then maybe you should study different films which don't focus so much on tension and suspense. Your Richard Linklater films, which pretty much focus on getting the information across of the character, a lot of the time with his films, you're engulfed in a world, and it's all about maybe the kind of flow of the motion in the frame a lot of the times. At least that's the way I see it. The colours of his films, the lighting specifically when it's a sunset, you're getting across these emotional brushstrokes rather than shooting for suspense. You're shooting for the location, the atmosphere of it a lot of the time. So, and you don't always have to shoot one or the other either. You can shoot for both if you're that much of a genius that you can think of both of those things at the same time. It's something which I would love to be able to do, so that there is kind of more and more content, more and more richness to a shot. Ultimately, if you've got 3 shots, one after the other, you want all of those 3 shots to be absolute the Mona Lisa. You want them all to be gold. And if they're not gold, then don't include them. If you have a montage sequence of 10 shots and 5 of those shots are naff but they make sense, get rid of those 5 shots because they're not adding to it. they're taking away from those 10 seconds. They're diluting the film, and you should never be diluting the film with any shot. You should always try and make a story, at least try and make a story with the best shots and shoot from the best shots rather than do it the other way, whereas you try and use all the shots to make a story. Now, if you want to see a lot more of these videos, if you want to see my topics ranging from character to cinematic language to atmosphere to sound to score composition to anything from the philosophy of filmmaking, from just films that you maybe should be watching, I go through all these topics like really in depth quite a lot of the time, and what I'm trying to do is build this kind of like full curriculum of different topics which can be really explored and really kind of, as time goes on, just kind of mastered and dissecting each film one by one, including my own work, including the stuff that's going forward on my own journey. So if you guys are going on a similar kind of journey and you need someone to follow and to kind of work along with and to kind of be a kind of mentor figure for that, then I realise I'm just inviting myself to be your mentor, but this is what I'm planning to do. For that, I'm going to need some money. I'm going to need to be able to fund going out to places like this. I'm going to need to be able to fund making my films, and this is what I want to do for a full-time job. This is, honestly, I love doing this. So if you want to give some money and actually get access to these videos, I went to Boston, I went to New York, I went to Philadelphia, I've been to Vienna, I've been to Prague, I went to all these fancy places. But the reason why I went to these fancy places is because for a start, I wanted to go on holiday, but I also had to teach there. I had to show you guys absolutely that I am dead serious about this, not just as like a this is how you set up a camera, this is how you want to be using the triangle of exposure and all this, and whilst all of these technical things are important and almost cinematic language to like a mid shot, medium shot, long shot is important, 3-act structure is important, right? But the fact is that a film can be open-ended, so what the fuck is a 3-act structure? The fact is you can do whatever the fuck you like, really. It's just how it's judged in retrospect. Was it good in retrospect? So is it an artistic piece? And if you guys agree, why don't you join up? Why don't you actually, go down, press the link, and, find these videos, pay for them, and get access to them. And I'll really appreciate that, and I'll be able to make more of them, and I'll be able to, fund doing them maybe at a higher production value. Maybe I'll get like, some kind of shots of films going on in the corner at the time as well, and that'd be really cool to be able to dissect films as I'm talking about them, maybe. And we shall see where we end up. But the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if I get a little bit of support, and you guys are going to get some great content because of it, because I will just not stop talking about film and the stuff I have to talk about, the philosophy, the depth that I want to go to in this is like, I'm going into my own psychology, let alone, a filmmaker's kind of how far you can go with cinematic language and the philosophy of how you make a film. It's like, is there just one way to make a film, or is there multiple ways, or is that whole there's multiple ways thing a big lie? So click the link, get those bloody classes going, and you start now. We'll both build up our knowledge together. I encourage fucking comments which are gonna talk about this, which are gonna talk about how we can go a bit further with some of these ideas. I'm working it out the same way you are. I'm learning just as you are, just as Martin Scorsese is still learning now. I want him to be on this channel talking to him about what the fuck is film doing now. you know, where do we go from here now that the greats have come and gone, and now the new greats are here, and now we've got digital, and it's all a bit different, but it's still going to the roots of cinematic language and philosophy. It's like, what can we do with this? Where can we go?